With our base mesh complete, we're going to go ahead and begin sculpting. Before we can begin sculpting, the main thing that we need to do on our little base mesh here is we just need to apply our mirror modifier. I have saved this as a separate file for sculpt, such that you have access to each one of these. So if you download the source files, you will find the base mesh, the sculpt one, and any other files. So let's go and apply the mirror modifier. And then we'll immediately just add in a multi-resolution. The multi-resolution is what allows us to actually do the sculpting on multiple levels of resolution, so that as we need more and more detail, we can just add another level of resolution, and each level before that will be maintained. So let's also switch right over into sculpt mode, and we'll hit T to bring up our toolbar so that we have all of our sculpting tools available at hand. The one thing to note, since we're using 2.63, we now also have the clay strips tool, so that gives us access directly to that. And then we also have some slightly modified menus down here, where now our brush tools and such are available via sculpt tool. But the main one we'll be using will be the clay strips, clay, and a few others. So let's now just hit subdivide first on our multi-resolution. And the main thing to keep in mind as you're doing this is to only subdivide when needed. So, the general rule of thumb in sculpting, and everyone will tell you slightly different, but the general rule of thumb that I like to follow is to try and keep your resolution as low as possible. And so do all detailing possible on the current level before going up to the next level. So in this case, some things I'll do is I'll go ahead and, actually, one thing I want to do is enable symmetry along the x-axis, so that I only have to sculpt on one side. And so I might go ahead and push in the eyes a little bit by using my clay tool and just start kind of getting those general shapes in there. I'll start bringing some of these out. Bring this in around the inside of the eye. Start bringing the brow out just a little bit. And, we're not doing a realistic hippo by any means, and so we've got a little bit of room to play. You will notice, some things in our references are obviously not realistic, such as the structure of the nose. A little bit of the structure of the mouth are not exactly like an actual hippo, and that's completely okay. That's one of the reasons or one of the many reasons that doing slightly stylized characters can be really entertaining, is that you do have a little bit more creative freedom when working with things. That's not to say that you should go completely out of bounds and completely ignore rules of anatomy and things like that. But as far as recreating, an actual animal in nature, we don't necessarily need to create it exactly the same. We can kind of take some bits and pieces of other animals and of, various hippos and things like that. Just kind of have some fun with it. But the general feeling that we're going for is that of a, kind of a baby hippo here. So I'm just sculpting a little bit here and there, trying to add a little bit more volume to the back of the ears, and to smooth out some areas in here, add some volume to the front here, and just kind of tweaking some things on my general mesh. You notice I really don't have a lot of resolution to work with, but I have just enough to kind of start tweaking things just one step further than I was able to in the initial base mesh. So, not a whole lot that I can do at this point, but like I said, I want to try and get in as much detail as possible on each level of resolution before I go up to the next level. And so, following my own advice, I'm pushing some things here and there. You'll even notice that, as I go in here, I'm actually going to go ahead and add in some of the very initial indications of the tail and such. And I think at this point, that's about as far as I can go. So I will now go and actually I'll add a hint of the lower jaw right there. And now I will go ahead and subdivide one more time, which immediately gives me a lot more detail to work with. And at this point, I'm going to switch over to my crease brush by hitting Shift-C, and I might start creasing in some of the major wrinkle and blubber forms. So, right here around the neck, I've got enough geometry to start kind of hinting at those and making sure that I'm following a lot of those forms. I might do a little one right there, around the legs in particular. I want to be sure that I'm kind of accenting where the the fat rolls on the hippos are. Hippos are really have a lot of blubber, similar to walruses and elephants and things like that, and particularly baby hippos, are going to have quite a bit. And so I want to be sure that we really accent those details. That's one of the things that's really going to kind of sell this character as a whole, is just, he's going to be very soft and cuddly. So we want to be sure that we're putting in those kinds of details and really working towards. I'm going to start adding in a little bit more push at the front of the feet to start indicating the toes and such. Not a whole lot, but just enough to start getting some of the basic forms in. Same thing, add a little bit more volume to the legs. They were just a little bit too rectangular, which I really didn't like, so I want to just be sure to add in a little bit more volume in there. Same thing, this shape just feels a little weird to me, and so I want to go in and just add a bit more volume. Okay, I might bring back my crease brush, crease the inside of the leg there, and maybe I'll crease around the jaw line. And hippos have a very interesting jaw where really it kind of comes up and then back in, kind of like that. They have just a very interesting shape, almost like that of sorts. So I want to just kind of get that initial shape in there. And one of the things that will actually work very much in my favor in this case for this character is that the hippo's jawline really kind of forms a natural looking smile. And since I have this kind of cute, cuddly little character, that's just going to work very well in my favor for getting a very friendly appeal to it. Okay, and maybe I'll crease in just a little bit around the eyes and a little bit around the base of the ear. And I think that's going to be about it for that level of detail. So I'm going to go ahead. Oh, nope, not quite yet. I'm going to just push these in just a little. I might smooth them out ever so slightly. Just using my smooth tool. Okay, now I'm going to go up one more level, and immediately I'm going to switch over to my clay strips brush. I like the way that it behaves a little bit more for doing kind of a sketchy approach and kind of layering things. If you haven't played with the clay strips brush, go. I encourage you to play with it. It's really good for getting a very kind of sculptural feel to your model. If you've ever worked in clay, I actually studied ceramics for a couple years at college. It was my focus, and so it really behaves a lot more like clay, which is, to those of us that have some actual clay background and such, just feels really good. I am going to go and use my inflate brush and just inflate the toes just a little bit. Same thing right here. Again, that's just going to help kind of push out those areas and start indicating that that's what they are. And now switching back to my crease brush, I'm going to start creasing some of these fat rolls a little bit more. Adding in a little bit more detail, a couple more layers. So you can see I've got a crease right in through here, a crease through here, crease through there. Just really kind of getting in that detail. I might switch my grab brush real quick, and I'm just going to pull up this area just to raise it up a little bit. And then I'm going to switch directly over to my clay brush and just add a good bit more volume right there at the chest and kind of in between the legs. And using a very large clay brush, then I can really kind of push all those areas up. And I know that, I really kind of went out of the bounds of my reference there, but I actually kind of like it. It just gives it a slightly more chubby feeling, which in this case works really well, I think. And so I'm actually going to go ahead and leave that. I'll go ahead and add in these fat roll indications here and around the legs and such. Same thing, I'll start indicating one, kind of wrapping around the back legs, around the back here. I might start creasing in the base and side of the tail. And then maybe I'll actually switch over to my snake hook brush, and I'm just going to grab this ever so slightly. And the snake hook brush is really cool because basically it grabs and lets go as you move along. So, you can see here, if I were to pull this out, basically it lets go of a vertex, consistently. That's a very poor description of the snake hook brush, but basically it's a little nicer than the grab tool for pulling out, say, tails or fingers or something, things like that. Just gets a little bit more even without just pulling everything out the same distance. Okay, might go ahead and add in another layer right there, another one here. And these rolls are really going to start coming together here in just a moment, because I'm going to use the inflate brush to then just kind of push them together, and we'll really start to accentuate all of the details in here. I'm going to get a little bit more around the nose in here. And you notice right now I'm still just using my crease brush to get the details that I want. You don't want to overdo it on the crease brush because it does, it is actually pulling the vertices in closer together and thus creating the kind of pinch effect. And so if you do it too much, then you're going to start kind of stretching some areas of the mesh. But it does work really well for doing things, adding in wrinkles and detail lines and things like that. All right, now I'm going to one thing I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to switch into object mode real quick. I'm going to position my 3D cursor right here and make sure it's actually in the center, so then I'll position it. I'm going to hit Shift A, add in a mesh and a sphere, hit go right into edit mode, and this is just going to be the eye. There we go. And this way I will be able to sculpt around this to really get the detail exactly like I want. I'm going to go and hit Shade Smooth. I'm going to add in a mirror modifier and a subdivision surface. There we go. And so now I can go right back into sculpt mode and start sculpting the details around the eye here. I'm going to go and switch back to my clay strips brush and just bring the eyelids out here. And these ones. And this way, rather than just guessing on what the eyeball shape is, I can just go ahead and get it exact. Might give a little bit more form to the brow here. You will notice that our character, in the reference has very pronounced brows, and so I want to be sure that we get that in. Okay, that's starting to feel pretty good. It's just a matter of sculpting, and sculpting. Okay, I switch back to my crease brush, start kind of detailing some of these areas just a little bit more. And maybe I'll go back to my clay brush. I'm going to push in the inside of the nostrils just a little bit and then kind of bring this bit around. Okay, there we go. And maybe I'll bring this up in here. And now let's do a little bit of work on the ears. On the ears, I really want to bring, they fold in on themselves a little bit. So I'll bring this out, add some volume. Might increase my strength just a little bit. And I'm going to continue trying to kind of bring this layer as if it's kind of curving around here and around like that. Then this one is kind of coming up almost under it and just really kind of adding some good depth to it. And also, hippo's ears are almost seem like they're attached at a very small part, and then they kind of get bigger, giving them that kind of floppy floppy ear look, and so I really want to bring in the base of the ear. So I'm just going to use the crease tool just to pull that in, and then maybe I'll use my grab brush, pull it in even further. But rather than using the grab brush like this, which gives me kind of weird results, I'm going to switch over to a sharp curve, which then allows me just to kind of pull it right in about like that, and just, kind of pull it all to more of a point. And then at the same time, I might go ahead and just reshape the ear just ever so slightly. Okay, I think that will work well. Let's go ahead and I'm going to boost up one more level and continue sculpting in some of these details. So using my clay brush, I'm just going to add in the eyelids here and a little bit more volume right around the eyeball itself. Same thing right here. So I'll first add in basically the eyelid itself, and then I'm going to add another layer over that to indicate, the actual skin hanging over the eyelid. So that's what this second layer is right there. And then I can accent that by using my crease brush like this. And then, going out in kind of a crow's feet direction of sorts. If I hold down Control and draw out along the edge of the eyelid, I can actually do a reverse pinch where it'll actually pull them together to kind of sharpen that edge. And that works well. If you want to accent an edge, then that works really well. And I am using a tablet while sculpting. This does make the process a lot easier, in my opinion. You can most certainly do it with a mouse if you choose, but you'll find, particularly if you have experience as a traditional artist or like to sketch or anything like that, you will most likely find the tablet to be a much more natural experience while sculpting and really allow you to push your sculpts a lot further without having to just fight the mouse a lot. That's not to say that you can't do it with a mouse. Actually, all of the sculpting that I did for the first half year or so when sculpting first became available in Blender, I did almost exclusively with a mouse because I didn't have a tablet. And you can definitely do it. I just, if you intend to spend a lot of time sculpting and you find that you really enjoy it, I do highly encourage you to get a tablet. Even the very cheap Wacom Bamboo, I think they start at like $70 US, is very usable, and many people may think that it's nothing more than just a hobbyist tablet, but it actually does work quite well. And I know for a fact that there are actually many professional users, even outside the Blender world, that use the Bamboo tablets as their everyday tablet. So it's most definitely an option. In fact, Kent Trammell, one of our other Blender Cookie authors and accomplished artist at a full production house, I believe he mentioned that he actually uses a Bamboo tablet as well. Although don't quote me on that. For my case, I'm actually using a Wacom Intuos 4 from about 2 years ago, I believe. So it's actually, unfortunately, all outdated now, but it does serve its job quite well. So one of the things that I mentioned is that, I really want to get this to be a very happy little hippo. And right now he's starting to look a little grouchy. And, one of the main reasons for that is the eyelid or the eyebrow shape that I have right now. This is a very sinister look, and that's really not what I want at all. So what I'm going to do is, one, I'm going to smooth out this area just a little bit, and then I'm going to immediately bring up with my clay brush. I'm going to add a little bit more volume up in here. So I'm going to get more of this feeling, and that will give me a much more relaxed, almost like innocent look in a way. And particularly if I, take these wrinkles around the eyelid, and if I just arc them up towards the top of the head and towards the brow, it'll immediately give it a much more relaxed look. If I also go ahead, and another way to do it is if I accent the mouth by just trailing some wrinkles at the back up in kind of a fake smile of sorts, that will also help accent the expression on the hippo to make him look a lot more relaxed. And I'm going to smooth this out even more and even go ahead and bring up the eyebrows a lot earlier. And try and give them almost like a downward slant, kind of like this, will feel a lot better, I think. And I am starting to get a little low on resources since I'm recording this at the same time. You know, it's a little harder to sculpt everything that I would like. Plus, this is not actually my main workstation. I mostly do my recording on this one, and then I do most of my sculpting on my iMac, just because my iMac has a little bit more RAM than this one does. And RAM is definitely very vital if you want to do a lot of sculpting and such. Definitely encourage you to really invest in your RAM. Obviously you also want a very good processor, and if you're doing rendering, you want a good video card and such. But RAM is not to be overlooked. Okay, there we go. Just a little bit more detail in there that just helps make him look a little bit more relaxed and such. And I think we can really kind of keep going with this as far as we like, but I'd like to do a little bit more detail around the legs and such. So I might add in some wrinkles around here. I will go and use my inflate brush now, which you can see that if I basically just outline the wrinkle with the crease tool and then go over with the inflate brush, this actually works really well to then just kind of deepen some of those wrinkles and expand the effect a bit. Because the inflate brush basically just works by pushing all faces under under the brush along its normal, and so you can both you can really kind of push faces both up and down at the same time. If you do hold down Control, it will push them down. You can't push them down up and down at the same time, but if two faces are kind of facing each other, then you can actually bring them closer together, because again, it will push them along the normals. And so you can really kind of, further accent wrinkles and things like that. And you can also use it fairly well for actually just drawing wrinkles themselves without too much trouble. Really, there is no right tool for the job. When sculpting and such, it is merely what tool works best for you. And frankly, not to go off on a little tangent, but that's really goes into the whole software thing too. Blender is nothing more than a tool. Blender is not going to make you a good artist. It's not going to make you a bad artist either. It's merely how you use the tool, whether that is Blender, 3D Studio Max, ZBrush, XSI. It really doesn't matter what you use. It's up to you in how you use it. And I'm not sure that's something that's highlighted enough particularly in the Blender community, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but just something that I don't think we should forget. Okay, and I'm going to add in a little bit more detail now in the toenails by just kind of creasing around them. And then we're probably going to push it up one more level before kind of calling it quits for at least this portion of the sculpting. Just kind of push that back a little bit, just get a little bit more curve to it. Maybe I'll just use my grab tool as well. Just pull that back, pull that back. Okay, I'm going to switch back to my crease brush and push in some of these areas a little bit more. Bring in my inflate brush. Just kind of help smooth out some of these areas. And these wrinkles are really feeling just way too blobby to me, so I'm going to just smooth them out. They're feeling just a little bit too much. You know, we want this character to have a very kind of soft, almost cuddly feel to him, but I don't want it to just look, you know, like strips of clay just kind of rolled together. Okay. I'll use my inflate brush just to push in some of those areas just a little bit more that I just put in. There we go. That really helps with some of the detail right in there. And maybe I'll use my inflate brush on the eyelids as well. And okay, I'm going to save my file, make sure I don't lose anything. And let's go ahead and push it up one more level just to get some last bit of sculpting in here. You will notice that I'm starting to lag just a little bit. So one thing I can do to help save some of my speed is under the sculpt menu, if I enable fast navigate, what that'll do is it'll lower the resolution every time that I rotate around the viewport, allowing me to more easily get to the areas that I want. One other thing I can do is if I hit Shift B, I can bring up my hide box and I can just drag across the area that I want. Oh wait, no. Let's see. I got my hotkey wrong, I believe. Alt B, maybe? Ah, there we go. And that allows me just to hide portions of the mesh. So anything within the box with Alt B will be shown. Anything outside the box will be hidden. Just allows me to kind of consolidate my view just a little bit, get slightly better results or slightly better speed, which right now, you know, I'm really kind of at the limit of what my computer can do while also recording. And so I'm, you know, not able to do a whole lot more. But that is one thing that you can do to increase performance when you're sculpting. So I'm just adding in a little bit more detail here and there. If I hit Alt B again, that will reveal the rest of my mesh. I can go into a little bit more creasing here and there. Get these lines a little bit more distinct. Maybe use my inflate tool, push that area in just a little bit, and then maybe I'll push these out, or yeah, bring these out a little bit again with the inflate tool, just getting a little bit more volume to them. I'm holding down Control when drawing across this line just to help kind of sharpen the edge of the eyelid there. Okay, now those feel a little too bold to me, so I'm just going to smooth them out just a little bit. Okay, let's take a look at our handiwork. Okay, so that's actually feeling pretty good. There's a couple areas in here that, you know, maybe need a little bit more detailing or a little bit more form to them, where it just, you know, it feels a little bit like the area got left, and so all the surrounding areas look detailed and such, and then these areas are not. And so I want to address those real quick. And that feels pretty good. Let's maybe go in here, and I'm just going to use my clay brush, and let's just add in a little bit more, and actually the crease brush, and I'm just going to add some wrinkles kind of around the mouth line. Same thing here. And I'll use my inflate brush again, just to push these in, or push them out a little bit, I should say. And then I will also smooth them a bit. I don't want to overdo it on the detail. I just want them to get some subtle extra detail. And then maybe I'll go ahead and really kind of accent that line. That's just kind of a nice line in the overall shape here. Maybe that's a little too obvious that it's a spiral. It just feels a little weird. And maybe I'll actually go ahead and solve some of that by inflating the inside of the nose. Hippos, since they go underwater a lot, they have a very different nose than you might initially. Ooh, that actually just looks kind of weird. I'm having a little just creative freedom here while I'm working on this. But they are basically able to, if I hope I've got this right, I believe, they should be able to actually close their nose essentially. Same thing, they can basically close off their ears and whatnot and really have pretty good mobility in the water and such. And okay, let's go in and on the feet, let's do this last bit. I'm just going to get a little bit more detail around the toes and such. Basically add a line for each of the kind of toenails and then a wrinkle right around them will really help sell the whole thing. Where before, there really wasn't a whole lot there. Oh yeah, much better already. Kind of smooth out that a little bit. Okay, and I'll go and do the same thing on the back, and then we will call this section done so that we can then move on to the retopology. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and inflate these toes just a little bit, accent them a little bit more, and then also go in and pop up those wrinkles between them to really show that, it's flesh kind of folding over the cartilage and such. Okay, I think that will do it for this. Gives us a kind of cool, fun little hippo character, and we're ready to go ahead and start retopologizing this guy to get a little bit, give us a nice animation and texture-friendly mesh that then will still have all this detail. We can bake in a normal map. We could also go in and do a high-frequency sculpt if we wanted, where basically we start with the retopologized mesh, and then we sculpt on top of that. So we only basically sculpt where needed. It works really, really well. And I think that will do it. Okay, so saving our file, we're going to call that quits for the time being.